Good morning, good morning, good morning. I am super excited to have a conversation today that so many human beings tend to shy away from because it's about money. For those of you tuning in, I'm Clarissa Constantine. I'm the founder of the Parent Twin Connection, and I'm super excited to have Elisabeth Aragon with us today. She is the founder of the Pennsylvania-based nonprofit Chalkboard Financial. Where did that just go? Clearly, it's morning for me. But first of all, good morning, Elisabeth. How are you?
Good morning. All good here. Thanks for having us on.
Absolutely. So, obviously here at Parent Twin Connection, we talk a lot about life with teens and tweens. And I think the topic that we're tackling today applies to both the students, the kids, and the parents, because we're talking about financial and career success. And, a lot of people talk just about career success, like, let's figure out what I want to do for the rest of my life. We ask, high school kids, where do you want to go? What do you want to do? We talk about talking with the financial planners, but those conversations tend to be independent unless it's for your career, like how much money do you want to make? And like that's the extent of the intertwined, right?
Correct.
And you're saying they're actually rather more intertwined.
Oh my goodness, yes. I think partially because money and careers and moving forward, and I'm a mom myself, you can't help but intertwine yourself into your student and your teen and your child. So to kind of take a step back and untangle all the things. So yes, it's a challenge.
So I know one of the things that you talk about or that you wanted to address today is precisely how money and your identity are intertwined.
Oh my goodness. To start at the top, money and our identity start actually unbeknownst to us. A lot of it is how we were parented, and you're working through generational concepts here. So if your parents were, extra frugal or big spenders or not great budgeters, or maybe they were very well sound in all things finances, but maybe they didn't teach you as the offspring. So, and then because of how it impacts us as we are growing up and our own strengths and weaknesses. So maybe mom and dad didn't teach you, but you went to the extreme and save, and never spent. Or maybe you just spent because, again, no one taught you. And I think just to speak to that, there's only 25 states in the US that actually incorporate financial education into their high school programming. So um, it's this isn't a parent. This is a systemic, problem. This isn't just like, oh, oops, I made a mistake. You know, it's mind blowing to me that this isn't a pillar in education, but we're making headway. But that being said, like, so don't let it own you as a parent. Um, we all make parental mistakes. I'm a mom to 4 boys. I make mistakes, but this is a life skill that we can absolutely fix. It's something that we can halt, put the brakes on, and put in some just financial basics, just foundational things for students and teens. And what it does to their identity is just give them so much more confidence. And you, as a parent, peace of mind. I think we all need a little bit more of that these days, but just saying, hey,
That's the truth.
this is a skill set that my kid has, and he's got it, or she's got it, or, they are equipped, and you can breathe.
Right. Well, and I can definitely relate to the identity based on, my experience growing up, without going too much into detail. There always seemed to be month at the end of the money, as it were, instead of money at the end of the month. And that was a big contributing factor to why I totally own the fact that I'm a workaholic now. I've done my own work on a lot of cases, but there's still, it's deep, and there's a lot of layers of the onion of the ogre, so to speak, to unpack for all of this. So I can definitely see where you're coming from of like, it's a huge part of our identity as adults, and it's really easy to pass that on to our kids. So let's chat then about like, okay, if our goal is to stop some of that generational process, right? Let's
Right.
talk goal setting, both for parents and for kids, like, or for the teenagers. Like, if we recognize that we've got our own stuff that we're trying to navigate, whichever side of the spectrum we're on, right? Financially, how do we help how do we help the kids in our worlds have those healthy relationships with money, which almost seems like a healthy relationship with food.
Right, right,
Right.
in all the things, it's balance and healthy, and I would say taking a step back and, one of the first things that, Chalkboard Financial does in our classroom settings is teaching students how to set a goal and then the steps to achieve it. And I think on the parent side, well, in conversations we've had with numerous parents and just workshops that we've held is just asking your child a couple questions. And it's not getting the answer right away. It's first asking them, what does success look like to you? Very simply. And what a student is looking for in the next 5 years, 10 years. And let's just keep it at that 5-year mark, because what you're really equipping them to do is say, hey, this is where I'm charting to go, and then here are the steps that you can walk them through to help them achieve that pinpoint. And just that skill set right there. Then, in 5 years, how many of our goals have changed in 5 years? Let's not, chart
Yeah,
out 10
sure.
years. The
Right.
world has changed in 5 years. Economics has changed in 5 years. There's so many things that change so quickly. So just charting that goal point, and
Right.
then as mom and dad saying, "Okay, let's how do you get there?" And that's when you are more of the lighthouse guide versus, "Well, you have to do this and you have to do this."
Right.
Like, really empowering them to say, "Okay, well, this is where I wanna go, and step 1," and they will then start coming to you and say, "Well, if I need to get here," say they're saying, maybe they're not on the college track. Maybe they're like, "Hey, I need a gap year. I don't know what I wanna do. What does that look like?" And now every parent, I think, either gets excited about a gap year or they're like, "Oh, like, what does this look like?" And then that's where we can talk about finances, and that's what does that look like?
Well, because the other thing I was going to say is, not only do all of these things change in a short time frame, and it's hard even as adults to look past 5 years. Sometimes it's hard to look past this year or 3 years from now, depending on the circumstances. But kids don't have the developmental ability to think that far ahead, So even I would think, like the younger the kid, maybe even looking at like a 3-year goal or something like that. So let's talk about some of those goals that we could help them set that maybe folks haven't thought of, things like if your kids are in scouts, being able to do some of the scouting camps, or if they're 10 right now, 10 or 11, they're only 5 years away from legally being able to get a driver's permit or a driver's license. And so if that's something that's a comfortable fit in your family, maybe something like, hey, if you want to be able to have your own vehicle by the time you get to whatever age, setting up a family dynamic of whether they're going to have to pay for it all themselves or everything that they contribute, whether the parents will contribute part of it. What are some other goals that you've seen families set to help kids with this? And then we can talk about some of the steps we can take to help them.
Absolutely. So, one of the first things, on the financial side, questions from parents that I get, probably daily, in so many areas is, how do you start getting your teen or tween established with good, healthy financial habits? And with the teen tween generation, there's so many useful areas that, and the first thing is, some parents do allowance, allocations. Pick what works for best for your family dynamic, obviously. But I think right out of the gate is getting them to allot money into buckets: save,
Mhm.
give or invest, live on the rest. And really just establishing those 3 buckets. And so it's not
Say it
overwhelming.
again.
So save, give and invest, live on the rest.
Love it.
So you're giving that investment bucket, save bucket, live on the rest, spending plan budget bucket.
Mhm.
And that's where we start talking about percentages, and simple math. 10%, 15%, live on the rest. Now, I'm a huge proponent of when you're young, you don't have bills. So let's put more in the other buckets where we can
Mhm.
save and invest. But again, do what works for the family dynamic, the student dynamic, and actually let them pick.
Mhm.
What they would like to allocate. I have a son who, 10, he does get a small allowance, and he has the biggest heart. He wants to give all the money away, which great. But we're really saying, and I allow him, like, here are a bunch of nonprofits or, animal organizations that help, or, he has a heart for kids with cancer. So it's like the mini thons at school and, all the different areas that he has a heart for, and he gets to pick. And
Mhm.
it gives him such joy to give to those organizations. And instead of mom and dad saying, "Hey, this is where we grew up and this is what we did," that your child pick a few things that they have an interest in and say, "Hey," and then they can explore and look at it
Mhm.
and something. The investment side, we teach financial education. So you'll never hear me not say put more money in a Roth IRA for your kid.
Mhm. Mhm.
And then on the budgeting side, I am all about having teens, tweens, skin in the game. So, on your comment about are we saving for a car by the time we're 16? I have so many parents that say, like, well, we want to give them something. If you can do that, great. But
Mhm.
are they paying for car insurance? Are they putting gas? Are you also giving spending money? Because
Mhm.
I really, and this is where, as a parent, you want to give your kid the world. You want to give them more than you had. But in what you're giving, are you setting them up for failure because they
Mhm.
don't have skin in the game?
Mhm.
Uh, we say, like, hey, if we tell our 10-year-old, because my husband and I have said there's such value in having skin in the game.
Mhm.
And he knows at 10, he comes up with little ideas on how to make money. And right now it's cute.
Mhm.
It will become more serious, in a few years. But having them set aside money towards something is
Mhm.
empowering them in ways, because let's face it, mom and dad are not always going to be here.
Right.
And, if they're a college graduate and they have never figured out how to save for something, how will they save for a house? Let's just
Mhm.
remove the, real estate market right now from the conversation.
And the APRs and all of that jazz, yeah. Take that
Right?
right off the table.
Exactly. But like, how will they do that? How will they
Right.
save for something big or little if you don't or plant that seed right now?
So, I just had a thought. Can I throw an off the cuff question at you? So, I know that there are some families where they're very open about finances, and, some of us grew up hearing, "Well, I don't know where rent is coming from this month," or, we know what constantly hawking the job boards or whatever, trying to find a job, because money's just really tight, especially to your point of where the economics are right now. And then there are some families who are like the adult generation is very tight-lipped about finances, and the kids just never have any idea of what's actually going on behind the scenes. What's your take? And granted, different dynamics in every family. There isn't a right or wrong period. It's what works in your family. What do you see as disadvantages or disadvantages of having a little bit more transparency from the adults to the kids so that the kids see a little bit more of that reality? Because you made the point of, like, are we setting them up to fail? If they don't understand how money works, they're going to be in a world of hurt 20 years from now, right? Or
Absolutely.
they're going to be living in mom and dad's basement, which isn't necessarily an ideal outcome either. Right? But, like, what's your take on that? How do we, if they wanted that transparency, like, what are the benefits, drawbacks, and or how do they establish it if they haven't had it already?
Absolutely. So, again, I think with the various nuances of what's taking place in today's financial market and how it has been hitting home, So we do basic things as an example, and how we operate here in our house. And so showing my kids our electric bill, they know how to turn on a light switch and turn off a light switch.
Mhm.
And we have a gas fireplace. You know how to turn that on and off. So,
Mhm.
and I show them those bills, and this is what this is in this house, and tying it to their actions. I think that's a very basic step,
Mhm.
but I think we've all seen electric bills,
Mhm.
skyrocket. So that's an action step that, my 4-year-old knows how to turn on and off the lights.
Mhm.
Very simple, very basic, but again, a starting point. And showing them the bills. So we don't talk about salary because I do still believe that that is not something that you talk to people about.
Mhm.
Um, but we do talk about the expenses and how we and where we choose, because we have the power to choose where we want to spend money. And it's common verbiage in our house. And,
Mhm.
with families that have very tight dynamics. My husband and I did walk through a season where things were really tight.
Mhm.
And, um, it was like I had a child, we had transitioned through a couple moves with his company. And Instacart wasn't out there. You couldn't just DoorDash. But I have moms ask me all the time, and I said, "Well, how many times are you at the grocery store? Regardless, can you strap your baby on and do Instacart?" That wasn't available in my day. But is that something that you could do? You're already there.
Mhm.
Can you add that into your and then relating it to your teen or your tween, and really saying, like, I really want you to do better than where we're at now. So this is
Mhm.
what can do. You can choose where you want to spend your money, and then tie it back to their goals. Like,
Mhm.
you said this was what you wanted your goal. Did something change? And if they said,
Mhm.
well, that's not my goal. Okay, what's your new goal? And if
Mhm.
it didn't change, then they have that accountability. And you're saying, okay, well, again, you said this was your goal. Are you reaching it? How
Right. Are you acting in alignment with that goal?
Right, right. Um,
Awesome.
right. So
What are some other goals that you've seen families set with their kids to, because there are some kids, I'm thinking of one friend of mine whose kiddo is just not money motivated, which is a foreign concept to me. I always have been, perhaps because of my experiences, tying back to the beginning of the conversation, right?
mhm.
But then another kiddo who totally is. So, like, how do you engage? It's hard to teach when they're not engaged, right? What are some other ways or goals that we can help families set to engage their kids so that we can have a chance at this education?
Right, right, right. Okay, so first I have to introduce a book that I just read, and it's written for, well, it's Adam Price. He's a PhD, but it's called "He's Not Lazy." Now, it is talking about more toward the boy, teen,
Mhm.
but it's talking about the ADHD
Mhm.
complex. But I think I read it, and it was a volume of information, and
Okay.
it really helped unpack the brain development. And they are almost reinventing themselves and becoming a new person in their teen years.
Mhm.
And he has the ADHDers as the opt out. And it's not because they're not motivated. Their brain is changing so much, and reading it, like I said, I feel like it was just this, like, whole new awakening of, like,
Mhm.
okay, you have a new brain forming, in these teen years, without logic or reasoning at that frontal, or the prefrontal cortex. And
Mhm.
so when you're empowering them to say, okay, here we are, this is where we're going, and you're really, so the as a parent, what can you do? And it's choices, A or B, and let them plan with you, and
Okay.
having them really supply the information when they're
Mhm.
not motivated. Say, okay, this is still a requirement. How are you choosing to get there?
Got
Uh,
it.
and that was really empowering to me as a parent. Again, mom
Mhm.
of 4 boys. I have 2 that have ADHD. So when we give checklists, we're a big checklist family. It helps them see things, identify things.
Mhm.
When you have one that's not motivated, which again, I have one of those, it's like, oh, I don't want to do that now. And I lay out right now, I'm at the homework level. Oh, I don't want to do that. I say, okay, well, you can choose not to do it now, but it means you have double tomorrow, and most kids are like, oh, okay, very simply. Um,
Right. Not doing it is not an option. It's setting it up so that it's a choice of when they do it. So,
right,
well,
right.
and so then like on the financial side, you're gonna contribute, here's option A, option B, which one did you want to work toward? What's your take on, like you mentioned, allowances? What's your take on, older kids having part-time jobs with school and things like that, whether it's they're going and working at McDonald's or they're mowing lawns or things like that?
So on that end, in regards to motivation and continuing to save, g- I go back to the power of choice. You're again the lighthouse as a parent and saying, okay, here's your
Mhm,
goal. What are you choosing to? How much are you choosing to spend on your goal or your investment in your future self? Um, and then we weave in that budgeting component. Are you asking them to contribute to the cell phone bill? Are they
mhm,
paying for all their own gas? Again, skin in the game, and you can do it, if you have the ability to cover their entire cell phone bill, but you realize, like, all right, you also know how much they're making, I would say as a parent, be it $12 or $10, or maybe they gotta have a great job at $15 an hour these days. You could say, all right, they can afford a $30 cell phone contribution,
mhm,
a month, or, car insurance. I know this is a first way for students to, establish credit
mhm,
on their parents' policy. So, being able to say, "All right, every quarter, you must contribute X, Y, and Z." So then you're involving a little bit more of those budgeting concepts where it's
mhm,
monthly, quarterly. Are you asking them for a year's contribution? Most
mhm,
people don't do that, but how you pay your insurance, you're then passing on to how your child may.
mhm.
Are you an upfront person, so you have a discount, or are you a monthly person because it affects your budget? And that's where I'd say you can be very transparent with your child. You could say, "Hey, it's better to pay it up front. We pay ours up front because A, we can afford it and it's cheaper." I
Right,
don't think you need to go into nitty-gritty details. You don't have to
sure,
share why
right,
you might pay monthly. Um, that's a common way that a lot of people live, and there's nothing wrong with that.
mhm.
So
Well,
saying,
and I've definitely seen families where they have the students or the kids invest like that, or they so that they do have the skin in the game, but the parents at the same time have said, "We don't actually wanna keep our kids' money. We're just using this as a way to teach them the contribution and the responsibility," and they actually just put that money in a completely separate account and save it up and give it back to the kiddo at high school graduation or college graduation or whatever, and so it's an easy way almost to force them into saving without realizing that they're saving,
right.
and depending if you put it in a Roth or you put it in, something that's a higher interest bearing opportunity, by the time they graduate college, if your kiddo's, 10 or 12 right now, another 10 years of that, that could be a pretty sizable amount of money that could help them with a down payment on a home if that's their next goal, or help them with student loans or something like that, along the way. So I hear parents in my head going, but I don't want to take money from my kids. Well, then don't take it and keep it to give it back to them, maybe.
Mhm. Right, right, exactly. And there's so many things, and sometimes too, it's like most parents are like, "Well, how?" We've also had parents that match. They take that concept of my student is contributing, my tween teen is contributing, saving something, and then they're matching it. And we've had
Hmm.
that conversation because they do want to help. And
Hmm.
so for every X, Y, and Z dollar that their child earns, works, raises, and you say, all right, well, we'll match that. How motivating is that for a student? Now maybe you can only match a little bit, and they say that in a couple years they saved $3,000, and you know you were able to also match that. Well, there's nothing wrong with your first car being $6,000.
Right.
Think about what a $6,000 car means. No car payment. There's no added
Mhm.
stress to you as a parent. you've paid for it up front, car insurance is lower, chances are it
Mhm.
probably gets pretty good gas mileage because it is a, you know, high mi or a a car that gets great gas mileage. So, you're probably talking your Toyota Corollas and Honda Civics used at this point,
Absolutely.
but a great first starter car, it's
Mhm.
the car that they will scratch. It's the scar the car that will take its first ding.
Yep.
And so and they because they have skin in the game, they are going to work to protect that car.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I know I did. I remember my first little, like, Volkswagen 1997 Volkswagen Jetta or something. Little
Yeah.
itty bitty. Yeah. All right. We could talk for a long, long time. So as a quick wrap up, we've talked about how our or how our finances, our comfort level, confidence level with finances impact our identity, and that's something that we as the adults in the community can take a look at for ourselves and consider how that impacts the kids in our worlds. Um, we've talked about student goal setting. We didn't actually talk. You had wanted to make a point about letting them fail. Talk to that real quick. Like, we've talked about how to help them set goals and help them to achieve them. What does it look like to let them fail?
I think this is a crucial development skill, actually. So how many of you as a parent have you gotten it all right all the time? No, we haven't. And as an adult, our brain is equipped to say, okay, oops, let's reroute, detour, and move forward. As a young person, again, with that developing brain, failure, they make mistakes. First, it was spilling milk at the younger age, and it was teaching them
Mhm,
how to clean it up. Well, they slowly get their hand-eye coordination. Well, at the teen level, failure looks a lot differently, and you're
mhm,
wearing it in your core, of who you are a lot differently. It affects,
mhm,
your next output, if you will. So I would say, we hear it like I say failing forward or failing up because you
mhm.
don't learn unless you make a mistake.
Right.
Everybody can get straight A's because they have memorized their times tables, but what do they do if they got 5 wrong? Are they a
Mhm.
hot mess? It's like, okay, whoop-de-doo. That's not really, I
Right.
failing at their inner core, but okay, so say they set that goal of, "I need to save $3,000 for a car," and they hit the $2,700 mark. Okay, you didn't fail, you still did you hit your goal? Would you have
Mhm,
done it in 2 more months? And that's where we go back to that goal setting and say, "Okay, well, will it affect you if you save for 2 more months or 3 more months?"
mhm,
Or is it a hard and fast goal?
mhm.
Um, how do we adapt that? And showing them like, "Yeah, we didn't hit it but end, we can
Right.
still reach it."
Sure.
Really that flexibility and adaptability skill set.
So then we went on, and by the way, I agree that failing, like, I see so many kids who are like, I want to be valedictorian. And it's like, okay, but what does that necessarily do? Like, it's a great feather to have in your cap. Don't get me wrong.
Mhm.
But does that teach you to adapt? Does that teach you to navigate the hard things? Because in my experience, as I was driving for a top ranking in school, I learned that failure was not an option. I learned that perfection was the ultimate goal and the only goal. And oh, let's talk about how much I've spent on therapy since on that topic alone.
Right, right.
We talked about budgeting and having skin in the game. So I know some of the folks who are kind of lurkers in parent tween world right now have younger kids, and they're paying attention and they're watching and going, how do I prepare so that some of the things that can come up when my kids are teens and tweens, maybe I can mitigate them a little bit. Maybe I can start addressing them earlier on. What would you say as like a closing piece to somebody with a kid who's like in that 5 to 8 range to start setting some of these conversations up? Because I mean, a 5 year old, I mean, like, a dollar is like manna from God, right? For a 5 year old, what are some different things maybe that are appropriate for the younger set?
So I would say when next time you're with them at the grocery store and maybe they do have that dollar to burn, if you will. Obviously it's on gum and candy and or Pokemon cards or whatever their thing is these days. And they see that dollar first, they don't understand the value of a dollar yet. And
Sure.
as a parent, it's like, okay, well, how do we get this concept across? Um, so you're in there trying to identify, and kids still at this point say, oh, they more is better. They
Hmm.
still think that like, well, a whole pack of lots of M&Ms is far more valuable to
Mhm.
me than, school supplies or whatever, what as a parent, pen,
Right.
pencils. Um, so they're going for that quantity, or maybe they see something that's large and that's what they want. You take them to a dollar store and it's like, oh, I can get this big thing for $1 versus, the M&Ms. Um, and you're going to see their identity in that. And
Mhm.
this is where we get to walk through like, okay, you might be able to get M&Ms for $1 and you'll eat them and it's gone.
Mhm.
Or you can get that one large toy and use it repeatedly. Which one do you find more value in? And using
I like
that,
that.
finding the value, but again, you're planting the seed, but you're giving them the power to choose. Is there failure at this stage? Not really.
Right.
It's your likes and it's your little person, but you're planting the seed and you're giving them the power to choose. I do
Awesome.
say, however, though, still giving them those buckets. Give, invest, live on the rest.
Love it. All right. Elizabeth, how do people find you if they have questions and they want to learn more about what you do in supporting families?
So you can find us at chalkboardfinancial.org. And then we also have my own personal identity site is elisabetharagon.com.
Awesome.
So both of those.
Cool. Awesome. Awesome. All right. We're going to wrap up, but Elizabeth and I are actually going to continue this conversation in Parent Tween Village here very shortly. We're going to be talking about how to define what success looks like and how to have that conversation with your teen or tween to help them identify what success looks like. It's very closely related to this whole conversation because we don't know what we're aiming for or what it looks like. How do we even set goals? So thank you, Elizabeth. I'm excited that you were able to join us today. And for anyone tuning in, if you are in our Facebook group or on our LinkedIn page, if you've got questions, just go ahead and comment. I'll make sure to circle back with Elizabeth so we get them answered. So thank you, and everybody have a fabulous day.
Thanks again.